Ram 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 Hare
Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna Krishna Hare Ram
Krishna
Ram Ram
Krishna,
Ram Hare
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 Ram,
Krishna Krishna
Ram
Krishna Krishna
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Ram
Hare
Ram Ram Ram
Krishna,
Hare Hare Krishna
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 Krishna,
Krishna Krishna Hare
Hare
Ram 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 Hare
Hare Ram,
Hare
Ram
Krishna Hare
Hare
Krishna
Hare
Krishna Krishna
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Ram
Krishna,
Ram
Krishna
Ram Ram
Krishna,
Hare Krishna Hare
Hare
Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Ram,
Krishna Hare Ram
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 Ram,
Ram Ram Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna Hare
Krishna
Krishna Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna Hare
Hare
Ram
Hare
Ram 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 Hare
Ram,
Hare Krishna Hare
Ram
Krishna Krishna
Hare
Krishna Hare
Hare
Ram Ram
Krishna,
Ram
Hare
Ram Hare
Krishna,
Hare Krishna Hare
Krishna
Krishna Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna Hare
Hare
Ram Ram
Hare
Ram Ram
Ram,
Hare Hare Krishna Hare
Ram
Krishna
Ram,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna Hare Ram
Hare
Ram Ram
Krishna,
Ram
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna
Krishna
Krishna Hare
Krishna,
Ram
Hare
Ram
Hare,
Ram
Hare
Ram Hare
Ram,
Krishna Hare
Ram
Krishna
Ram,
Krishna Krishna
Hare
Hare Ram
Hare,
Ram 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 Hare
Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna Hare
Hare
Krishna
Ram,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Ram,
Hare
Ram
Ram
Ram,
Ram Ram Ram
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare
Krishna Hare
Krishna,
Krishna Krishna
Krishna
Krishna Hare
Krishna,
Ram 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 Hare
Hare Ram,
Hare
Hare Ram,
Krishna Hare
Ram Ram,
Krishna Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Hare,
Hare Ram Ram Ram
Hare
Ram
Krishna,
Hare Krishna
Krishna
Hare Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Hare,
Ram
Hare
Ram
Ram,
Ram Ram Hare
Ram Ram,
Hare Krishna
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Hare
Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Ram
Hare
Ram
Hare,
Ram Ram
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Krishna Hare Krishna
Ram
Krishna
Ram,
Krishna
Hare
Hare Ram
Hare,
Ram Ram
Krishna,
Ram Hare
Krishna Krishna, Krishna,
Hare Krishna
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Krishna
Hare Ram,
Krishna
Ram
Krishna
Ram,
Hare
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 Hare,
Ram Ram
Krishna
Ram Ram Hare
Chaitanya, Prabhu
Hare
Nityananda,
Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna
Shri
Krishna Hare Ram
Advaita
Ram Ram Ram
Gadadara
Hare Hare Krishna Hare
Sivasadi
Krishna 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 Hare
Bhakta
Ram 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 Hare
कृष्ण
Hare
कृपा से
Krishna 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 Hare Ram 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 Ram
मेरे
Hare
Shri
और
Radhe
Krishna Krishna Krishna
नाम चलता की जय प्रभात की जय. Good morning, dear devotees. This is Shivani from Western Virginia. Welcome you all to Bhakti Sangha Japa conference call for this mid-morning session. Please forgive me for stopping your beautiful chanting. Let us move to our next part of the session, which is Sri Caitanya Bhagavat Adi Khanda chapter 13, verses 177 to 181. May I ask who will have joined this morning, please?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandvat Pranam, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Shri Guru and Gauranga and all the assembled devotees. Yashamati from Chicago.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Guru and Gauranga ki jai. Thank you Mataji for joining this mid-morning session and giving a wonderful association. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna Shivani Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. This is Vinta Gandharvika Devidasi from College Station, Texas.
Hare Krishna Vinita Gandharvika Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Guru and Gauranga ki jai. Thank you Mataji for joining and giving a beautiful and wonderful association and all your services. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, Shivani Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. Jai Shri Prabhupada. This is Preeti Vilasini Devidasi from Atlanta.
Hare Krishna Preeti Vilasini Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru and Gauranga ki jai. Thank you Mataji for giving a wonderful and beautiful association and all your services. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
The third one is.
Is there anybody else?
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisance. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to all the devotees. This sister joining from Texas. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru and Gauranga ki jai. Thank you so much for joining and giving a wonderful association, Prabhuji. Hare Bol, Hare Krishna. Is there anybody else who would like to introduce themselves? Hare Krishna, dear devotees, I welcome you all once again to Bhakti Sangha Chapel conference call for this mid-morning session. I would like to share a quote by Srila Prabhupada ji. Everyone is struggling to gain something which he does not possess, and he is lamenting for something which he has lost. Vrindavan, November 9th, 1972. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, we are very welcome. We are very fortunate to have His Grace Haridas Varya Prabhuji on the call today. Prabhuji will be enlightening us on Adi Khanda, chapter 13, verse 177 to 181. Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. Prabhuji, thank you so much for giving your valuable and wonderful association this morning. We're eagerly waiting to hear from you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru and Gauranga ki jai. Please take over the call, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai. First and foremost, am I audible? Is it clear?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, fantastic. Very happy to be back amongst the thick and thin of devotees of Bhakti Sangha Japa group. Very happy to be after Karthik. I hope all of you would have had a very blissful spiritual Karthik Mahotsava. It was very wonderful to see a lot of devotees after the pandemic come together in Vrindavan Dham. But wherever the Lord's glories are spoken, there definitely the Dham resides. So while I was definitely touring Vrindavan and going to pastime places, I used to always scroll and see the Bhakti Sangha Japa group and the topics. So it was always on my mind. So it's very, very great fortune of mine to come back and speak to all of you and share some of the realizations for my own purity. So I welcome one and all for this wonderful session on Caitanya Bhagavat, where we have got a very good opportunity to churn some of the nectar from the purports written by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So before we go into today's session, I would like to thank Her Grace Preeti Vilasini Mataji for kindly engaging me in this service immediately once I came back to my hometown where I reside, and I was put to service. So thank you very much, Mataji, for putting me in Krishna's service. So before we start, we would do the Mangalacharan, and then we would start with today's verses. We will see the translation and the purport, and very quickly we will try to churn some nectar. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahakana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahakana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yatkrpatamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hari Om Tat Sat. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Shri Nitai Gaur Sundar Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, my dear devotees, welcome once again to Chaitanya Bhagavat. Today we are reading from chapter number 13, Victory over Digvijay, that is Keshav Pandit, Keshav Bhatt, Keshav Bharati, Keshav Kashmiri. So we're going to speak about that chapter, verses 177 to 181. Very wonderful verses. So we will read the verse. I hope you can see my screen of Veda Base. Can someone confirm they can see the screen?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So we will, thank you, Mataji. We will read the verse, the translation, and the quick commentary, and then we will go to chant the verses. Text 177. Yavata marana nahi upasanahaya tavata sevaha Krishna kariya nishchaya. Translation, a very, very strong translation. Up to the time of your death, serve Krishna with confidence. Yavat marana nahi upasanahaya, tavat sevaha Krishna kariya nishchaya. Up to the time of your death, serve Krishna with confidence. So this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu speaking to the Brahmana, Keshav Kashmiri, who has been defeated, and now he's coming to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually giving him this instruction. Up to the time of your death, serve Krishna with confidence. In fact, this is such a beautiful, beautiful instruction that we should just print it and put it on our desktop or wherever we work on top of it. This is an instruction which we should wear it like a necklace on our neck, because this is such a beautiful way of life that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is mentioning. Up to the time of your death, serve Krishna with confidence. Every word is so potent. So let's read the commentary by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. One who rejects the worship of Krishna cannot properly explain the purport of Vedanta philosophy, one of the 6 branches of philosophy. Being initiated into all these instructions, the compiler of Kramadipika instructed his disciples headed by Gangalaya Bhatta about the process of worshipping Radha Govinda. Later on, Keshava and other scholars of Kashmira left the subordination of Sriman Mahaprabhu and took to another path. Turning away from the mercy of Sriman Mahaprabhu, Keshav Kashmiri and other so-called followers of the Sri Nimbarka Sampradaya, as well as the so-called scholars of Sri Vallabha Sampradaya, rejected the most beneficial and pure lotus feet of Sriman Mahaprabhu, the worshipable Lord of the compiler of Kramadipika, and took to another path. Both Sri Sanatana Goswami and Sri Gopalabhatta Goswami understood Keshavacharya, the compiler of Kramadipika, as a recipient of Sriman Mahaprabhu's mercy. And therefore, they collected ingredients from his book in their compilation of Gaudiya Vaishnava Smriti. Later on, the followers of Keshav Kashmiri gave up the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu and attempted to establish their own independent sampradaya. So we churn this verse a little bit. So this is where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving a very, very strong instruction to the Brahmana Keshav Kashmiri. He's saying that up to the time of your death, serve Krishna with confidence. So whichever word we take in this particular instruction, it is very potent. It is very instructive. The first word is up to the time of death. So it's not that intermittently till you reach death. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very clear. Yavat marana nahi. Up to the time of death. That means every second, every minute, every nanosecond, till our body is left behind. What is that we have to do? Serve Krishna. But he doesn't stop there. He says, serve Krishna with confidence. What is the confidence that he is talking about? We would like to churn about that a little bit here. So the first part of the statement is up to the time of death. So it is being spoken till when we have to do. But from the Srimad Bhagavatam, we see that there is umpteen amount of examples that devotional service does not finish at the time of death. In fact, devotional service is the means and the end. Is the very means and the end. How do we understand it? Just like if we want to go from one place to another, we have an origin and we have a destination. So we have an origin where our journey starts, and we have a destination where our journey ends. And we never say that the mode of transportation between the origin and the destination is the destination itself. For example, if one has to go from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles, Washington, D.C. is the origin, Los Angeles is the destination. One can go by car, one can go by airplane, one can go via train, or many other mediums of transportation. But we never say that car itself is the destination or airplane itself is the destination. We say these are the means for us to get transported from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles. But in the spiritual paradigm, we say that we are in this material world and our destination is the spiritual world, and the means is bhakti, but we also say that the end is bhakti. So this is very fascinating for us to know that the means and the end both is devotional service. So when the means and the end is devotional service, and Srimad Bhagavatam says that devotional service does not end at death, there are umpteen examples for it. Like, I would like to request the audience to give their answers based on their hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam. Right in the womb, devotional service can be performed. Who is the example? Who is the example for performing devotional service in the womb?
Prahlad.
Prahlad Maharaj. Anybody else?
Parikshit Maharaj.
Very nice. Parikshit Maharaj as well. Parikshit Maharaj saw the Lord the size of a thumb, and he was protecting him from the Brahmastra. And Prahlad Maharaj was fortunate to hear the glories of the Lord from Narada Muni, so much so that he was indebted towards Narada Muni. We all see nowadays that before going to the school, we have something called as kindergarten, where the children or the babies, they slowly get acquainted with school and the school curriculum and knowledge and halls of learning. Nowadays, before kindergarten, you have something called as play school, where they just go for a couple of hours of play so that they get acquainted with other people. Even the education has started before play school. Some people put them in creche or Montessori or whatever you call them. But Narada Muni was so advanced, he said that I am not waiting for the baby to come out and put him in some school. I'm going to teach him while he is in Kayatu's womb. So Prahlad Maharaj was instructed of devotional service. By this we get to know devotional service is not only when we get this body. While our body is getting formed in the womb, then also devotional service is about devotional service, about Krishna, we should know. And this is an example of Prahlad Maharaj. So in the womb, devotional service can be done. Now, once the baby is born and attains childhood, who are the examples of being children and they can do devotional service? Any examples from Srimad Bhagavatam?
Dhruva.
Very nice. Dhruva Maharaj, and we'll speak about Dhruva Maharaj a little bit in today's class. Dhruva was so determined. He was so determined that he wanted to sit on the lotus feet of his father, Uttanapada. But when Suruchi said that you have to be born out of my womb to sit in the lap of your father, and when he went to his mother Suniti and asked,
Hare Krishna, is it breaking for everyone?
Yes,
Yes,
Mataji.
Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, we can't.
Vishnu. Desires.
Prabhuji, your voice is breaking. We cannot hear you.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me now?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, can you
Yes,
hear me?
Prabhuji, we can hear you.
Yes, clear now. Okay. So we see this, that even while as a child, as Prahlad, as Dhruva Maharaj, devotional service can be performed. And he was so determined, he took it to heart and he went to the forest to perform. So this is very clearly seen. Okay, once a person attains youth, who has performed in youth devotional service? Any examples? Any examples of people who have performed devotion during their youth?
Can we give it from
Anybody?
Chaitanya Charitamrita?
Maybe I am not hearing them.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Prabhu. Can you hear us?
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, he can't hear even when I
Okay,
speak that
maybe
time.
it was someone speaking on the phone because I was not able to hear. Can someone speak?
Can you hear
Raj
us,
Prabhu,
Prabhu?
can you speak?
Can you hear us, Prabhu?
No, I'm not able to hear. Let me. Yeah, 1 second. Just give me a second. Okay, maybe we can use the chat to communicate. Okay, so maybe I'm not able to hear. Okay, we can use the chat to communicate. So, in the youth, gopis, but anybody else, any other examples? In the youth, who has served? Ambarish Maharaj is a very good example. Yes, let me try to log back in. Somebody's requesting me to log back in. Okay, I can do that. Hare Krishna. Can somebody try now?
Pandavas.
Pandavas, very good example. Thank you for youth. Yes, Pandavas is also a very good example. Ambarish Maharaj is another very good example for devotees who were practicing in their youth. Let's talk about old age. Devotion in old age. Who can be the best example of devotion in old age?
Dhritarashtra.
Dhritarashtra.
Dhritarashtra, very correct. He was the one who was inspired, was preached by Vidura, and he picked up this process of devotion. Khatwanga is another example. In youth, Bharat Maharaj is also an example.
Yayati in old age.
Yes, another very good example, right? And at the time of death, who performed devotional service?
Ajamil.
Ajamil.
Very nice. Ajamila. So we see that even at the time of birth, Parikshit Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, even in the womb, performed devotional service. And at the time of death, also Ajamila performed devotional service. So we see at death also. What about after death? If somebody goes to lower planetary systems, who performs devotional service in the lower planetary systems?
Can we say Maharaj Bali? Bali Maharaj?
Yes, Bali Maharaj, Sutal, in Bilva Swarga, Sutal planet, he is performing devotional service. Even if born in the Asura clan, he is performing devotional service. Okay, upper planetary systems, heaven, who is performing devotional service in heaven?
Can we say Chitraketu Maharaj?
Yes, very nice example. Chitraketu Maharaj, all the demigods, everybody is performing devotional service. And this is a great example is Chitraketu Maharaj, how he is performing. Okay, Vaikunta, liberation. Can devotional service be performed and reached higher? Who is the example?
Sanat Kumar.
Sanat
Or
Kumar,
Sanat.
yes. They are Nitya Suris, Garuda, Vishwasena, everybody, they are performing devotional service, correct? And Gopakumar, a great example, is there in Brihad Bhagavata Amrita, that how he still performs devotional service and attains Golok Vrindavan. So we see that devotional service is not starting when we are born, and devotional service is not ending when we die. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentions, in the purport, that till the time of death, one has to serve. One has to serve. With what? With confidence. Now, what is the confidence that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is talking about? Any guesses? Why does he mention about confidence? Why doesn't he say with enthusiasm? Why doesn't he say serve till your death with full vigor, with full force, with full conviction? He speaks about confident, nishchaya. Why does he say confidence? Any guesses, my dear devotees? There are no right or wrong answers. Please feel free to speak up. This is how we learn, how we churn, and how we also share our realizations. So why does Gauranga Mahaprabhu says with confidence?
Prabhuji,
And
it's the resolve. Maybe even if the body is weak, but if the resolve is very strong, then it keeps you going. That's what I understand.
And what should be the resolve, Mataji?
The resolve should be that I will serve Krishna till my last breath, just because I want to attain the love, and just because I love him. Maybe if they have attained the love, and if they are still continuing to serve, then it is out of love, and they get more love, and then again they give that love back to Krishna. So their bodily consciousness is gone because their mind is so much absorbed in the service that that resolve keeps them going. So I think with Nishchaya, these things are overcome. That's it.
Okay. So he should have said conviction, but he says confidence. One Raj Prabhu says very wonderfully, he says that devotee must have confidence that Krishna is there always for me.
Yeah.
So this is very nice. Confidence that come what may, we do, Krishna will protect us. Our result is guaranteed. Our success is guaranteed. All we need to do is constantly serve the Lord. So if somebody can allow me to share the screen again, I think it had been disabled. So I would like to bring back the point that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is mentioning. So, yes. So, here we see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying one has to serve with confidence. So, up to the time of your death, serve Krishna with confidence. This is being very, very clear. And this is an instruction he is giving. And this is the instruction by which all our Gaudiya Acharyas have lived their life. The best example is Srila Prabhupada. We know how, in his latest disappearance day, we witnessed so many devotees speaking about it. In fact, when I was in Vrindavan and hearing about for 5.5 hours his disciples, Srila Prabhupada's greatest gems are the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. They were glorifying Srila Prabhupada. They were talking about their time with Srila Prabhupada. And one of the realizations was by His Grace Bhavananda Prabhu. He was mentioning that how he used to sit outside the door of Srila Prabhupada and he used to wait in the graveyard shift, in the night shift, between 2 a.m. in the morning to 6 a.m. in the morning. Very important time because Srila Prabhupada would wake up and he would do his writing services. And at that time, for other disciples, the sleep would be at the peak. They would feel more sleepy, but they would be awake to serve Srila Prabhupada. So Bhavananda Prabhu, he was sitting in a chair outside the door of Srila Prabhupada. And immediately the electricity went off. And this was somewhere in Australia. So when the electricity went off, there was darkness everywhere. It was all pitch dark. Nobody could see even their hand. And all Bhavananda Prabhu could hear was Srila Prabhupada's cane knocking on the wooden floor, and he was walking outside the door. And he was outside the door, and he was knocking the cane, and he was seeing if he could make his way somewhere to get help, to get some light. At that point of time, Bhavananda Prabhu moved and it made a sound, a creaking sound, and Srila Prabhupada heard that. And he immediately asked, "Who is there? Who is there?" He asked twice. Bhavananda Prabhu was very afraid. He thought that he disturbed Srila Prabhupada. But very feverishly he said, "It's Bhavananda, Srila Prabhupada." And then Srila Prabhupada said, Bhavananda, always be with me and never leave me. Now, those were the words which were spoken by Srila Prabhupada. And Bhavananda Prabhu was explaining that how those words were so instructive at so many times in his life when his senses or when he wanted to go away from Krishna consciousness or devotees, he always remembered these verses by Srila Prabhupada. Always be with me, never leave me. And that he said that I would take it till my deathbed. Always serve Srila Prabhupada, always be with him. And Srila Prabhupada really did that because he did devotional service in his deathbed as well. He translated the purports of Srimad Bhagavatam, the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. So he is a living example in this case of this verse. Up to the time of your death, serve Krishna with confidence. In fact, Dhruv Maharaj is another great example. When he had to go back home, back to Godhead, he stepped on the god of death and he said that now I will go back. He stepped on liberation and he said, I don't want liberation, I'm going back. So he also won over death. In fact, I remember in one of the, during my initiation, my spiritual master, when he gave the beads to me, he said very wonderfully, he said a very beautiful statement. He said, Haridas, Varya, welcome to the parampara. And after that, he paused and he looked into the eyes and he said, welcome to deathlessness. Now that always remains with me. That's so profound because he said, welcome to deathlessness. That means, welcome, you are inducted into the parampara where we believe that the devotional service has to be continued life after life after life. It's very important to understand this philosophy. Once I was asked by my counselors, what's your vision of devotional service? And I told them, in the next 5 years, I would like to do this. They said, go further. Then I said, okay, next 10 years, this is what. They said, how would you plan to retire and what would you like to do after retirement? I said, that's 20 years away. They said, no, make your plans now. Srila Prabhupada, for 33 years, he was planning how to serve the mission. So you need to plan. Okay, I made the chart. And up to 60s, if I live up to 70s, if I live up to 80s, you should have vision. You have a vision board of what we need to do. And when I presented this up to 60, 70, 80, 90, whatever is my vision, what would I do every 10 years? At that time, you think, how would I lead my life? And then they said, after 90, they said, okay, what's your plan for next life? And that shook me. I said, I don't even know that whether I would be born as a devotee next life. They said, this is 10,000 years of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And one who is chanting his name, one who is taking Hare Krishna, if he's not going back home, back to Godhead, he's coming straight back to preach. So the counselors were saying, have a strong resolve of what you would do if you were born again. Now, I was thinking, how is this bona fide? Should we think beyond death? Should we think about services beyond death? And at that time, I read a very nice verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And in this Srimad Bhagavatam verse, it was very, very clear that even in the best of the prayers, even the greatest of the prayers, people speak about life after life. So if they can speak about life after life in a very nice way, why can't we think about it? So thinking in that way, when I was reading the Srimad Bhagavatam quote by none other than Rukmini's verses, Rukmini's letter to Krishna, she says very beautifully, she says, Yasyangri pankaja rajasnapanam mahanto vachanti umapatir ivatpatamo pahyahiti yarhi ambujakshana labheya bhavat prasadam jahyam ashun vratakrishan sata janma bibhisyat. The last few words, sata janma bibhisyat. She says, O lotus-eyed one, O Krishna, O Dwarkadish, great souls like Lord Shiva hanker to bathe in the dust of your lotus feet and thereby destroy their ignorance. If I cannot obtain your mercy, so she's saying, in this lifetime, if I cannot obtain your mercy, I shall give up my vital force. That means death will come upon me. I will commit suicide, which will have become weak from the severe penances I will perform. But then she says something very beautiful. She says, then after hundreds of lifetimes of endeavor, I may obtain your mercy. Jahyam ashun vrata krishan sata janma bhisyat. She says that after hundreds of lifetimes of endeavor, I may obtain your mercy. Now, this means that she has a very clear vision. If I don't attain you now, does not mean it's end of the story. I have the confidence. I have the belief. I have full conviction that at least in the next 100 lifetimes, I may obtain your mercy. She's pleading to Krishna in this way, and Krishna hears. And this is what is required in devotional service, this confidence that Krishna will protect us. Rakshati iti vishwaso, that Krishna will protect us. Our efforts will not go in vain. Krishna is looking at each and every single endeavor that we are putting in devotional service. This is very, very important. And this is the reason why he says in the Bhagavad Gita, he says those two words, Ma Shuchaha, Sarva Dharman Parityajya, Mam Ekam Sharanam Braja, Aham Tvam Sarva Bhapebhyo, Mokshashyam Maha Shuchaha. Mahashuchaka means do not fear, have full confidence. Please be very clear that you don't need to fear. I will always protect you, says Krishna. So this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is instructing the Brahmana, that up to the time of your death, serve Krishna with full confidence. So after that, he doesn't stop himself by saying this. He goes further to teach us how we should serve. And this is a very beautiful verse. 2 verses which we will read, text 178 and 179. से विद्यारा फल जनिह निश्चय कृष्ण पद पद्मे यदि चित्त वित्तराय महा उपदेश एई कहिलुन तुम्हारे सबे विष्णु भक्ति सत्य अनंत संसारे. Know without doubt that the goal of knowledge is to fix one's mind on Krishna's lotus feet. Let us read that verse again. Know without doubt. Look at the way Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is emphatically mentioning. Above, he says, up to time of death, very clear, with confidence. Now here he's again re-emphasizing and saying, don't have doubt. Have complete confidence on what I'm saying. Without any doubt. Keep the goal of knowledge is to fix one's mind on Krishna's lotus feet. That the essence of knowledge is to keep one's mind in Krishna's lotus feet. The best advice Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving, this is not given by anybody else, this is given by Sriman Mahaprabhu himself. The best advice I can give you is that devotional service to Supreme Lord Vishnu is the only substantial truth throughout all the 3 worlds, throughout all the worlds. Now here, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes a very wonderful purport. He says, Sri Gaurasundara said, if the living entities engage all their knowledge, experience, and wealth in the service of Lord Hari, then they will attain supreme auspiciousness. So this is the first instruction Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is explaining to what Sriman Mahaprabhu said. He is mentioning that we should engage our knowledge. Whatever we learn, whatever our skill sets are, we should engage that, and we should engage our wealth in the service of Lord Hari. And the goal of knowledge should be to worship the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now one may ask, what is there in the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? For that, we have to see Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam in the 11th canto, 5th chapter, 33rd verse. This is the most beautiful verse. In fact, there are many verses in Srimad Bhagavatam which mentions about the lotus feet. But personally, I love this verse as one of the most nectarian verses. This and another one. So let's just churn a little about the lotus feet. First sloka about the lotus feet we saw from Rukmini, how she says that the dust from the lotus feet is even hankered by Lord Shiva and Brahma. This is how she mentions about Dwarakadish's lotus feet dust. But here we will, Karabhaja Muni, we will hear what he is saying. Deyam sada paribhava ghanam abhishtadoham tirtaspadam shiva virinchinutam sharanyam Bhrityartiham pranatapala bhavabdipotam vande mahapurushate charanaravindam. And Srila Prabhupada gives such a beautiful purport that we should read this again and again. So here the translation says Mahapurusha. Now Mahapurusha can be Lord Ramchandra, can be Purna Purusha like Krishna. It can also stand for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So here, my dear Lord, you are the Mahapurusha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I worship your lotus feet. Why? Because first point, he says, which are only the eternal object of meditation. Now, this is very important because in Chaitanya Bhagavat, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is mentioning very clearly that it is the only sustainable truth. That means that many other things in this material world will come and go, will come and change. But the only thing that will eternally remain is the lotus feet. Now, I was told this very nicely in Vrindavan during this Kartik Mass. One of the devotees, while he was doing parikram to Govardhan, he was mentioning that everything in Vrindavan, you will find it to be changed because we don't have the spiritual eyes to see the beautiful Vrindavan. So we'll find many things, many shops coming up. We might see the open sewers. We might see the different monkeys. We might not see it so hygienic. But one thing which we can see back then and back now is the dust of Vrindavan. That has not changed. That is the same dust in which Krishna's lotus feet has touched Vrindavan. And that dust, when it hits the forehead of liberation, it is said that liberation gets liberation. How will liberation get liberation? Only when the dust from the lotus feet of Krishna, which is the Vraja Dhuli, which hits the forehead of liberation, then liberation gets liberation. And hence, that's why so many devotees flock Vrindavan. Why? Because it's an object of meditation. And the second quality, by remembering the lotus feet, very beautifully Srila Prabhupada mentions, those feet destroy the embarrassing conditions of material life. Now, my dear devotees, what is embarrassing conditions of material life? Can somebody give me an example? Why is Srila Prabhupada mentioning it as embarrassing conditions of material life? Why is he not saying distress of material life? He's saying embarrassing conditions of material life. Why is the necessity to mention it as embarrassment? What is the embarrassment that we face in material life? Why is Srila Prabhupada saying it? Any guesses? And how by lotus feet this embarrassment is going? Any examples of embarrassment of conditions of material life? Why Srila Prabhupada is saying like this? Anyone? Is someone speaking again? Or am I not hearing? Disease, okay. Somebody saying disease. Everything material, yes. Thinking. So embarrassment here mentions to the fact that one is thinking very clearly that they will attain a lot of sensory happiness, that they will enjoy a lot of sensory pleasures. But again and again, these senses give us big dhoka, gives us big distress, and we come to know that we are not the enjoyers. So it is such an embarrassing position that we think we are the enjoyers and we get duped again and again and again, and we don't learn from this mistake. So this is a big embarrassment, and we get frustrated. But what is the remedy? The lotus feet of the Lord. Because it gives us the greatest award or the desire for the soul, which is pure love of God. What we are seeking for, and that becomes one. So Dhanashri Mataji is saying, in spite of repeated calls to come close to the lotus feet, we are still delving in material life. Yes, it's an embarrassment, attachments. So all these are embarrassing in front of the success that we would like to taste, which is through spiritual success. So this is point number 2. It's a great object of meditation. Second is that it gives us a remedy from the embarrassments of material conditions of life. And then the third reason is given. Your feet are the shelter of all the holy places and all saintly authorities in the devotional service and are honored by powerful demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. In fact, 2 reasons are given. First, it's a shelter of all pilgrimage places. Second, all devotees reside. And then it is also mentioned that it is worshipped by demigods like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. Another reason is given, the lotus feet, that you willingly protect all those who simply bow down to you with respect. So whoever bows down to you, you give shelter with your lotus feet. And then you remove the distress of your servants. So it's said in conclusion, your lotus feet are actually the Bhavat Potham, that is Bhava Abdhi, the ocean of birth and death. It is the greatest boat for crossing over this ocean of birth and death. So if we need an ocean to cross over this birth and death, we need the lotus feet of the Lord. In fact, Lord Ramchandra, when he was crossing Mother Ganges with the help of Kevat or Guha, the boatman, he kept his lotus feet into the boat and he crossed over Ganges to the other side. And immediately when he came to the other side, Lakshmana asked Guha, please tell me the fare charges, include GST, include that service tax, and tell me what are the charges that we have to pay for 3 travelers, Lakshman, Sita, and Ram, to come from one shore of Ganges to other shore. And Guha said a very wonderful answer. He said, people who do the same job, they don't take money from each other. And Lakshmana was confused and angry at the same point of time. He felt that Guha has insulted Lord Ramchandra. He said, what do you mean by same job? You are a boatman. My brother is a king. Of course, he's banished now, but doesn't mean that he has lost his kingly stature. He's a Kshatriya. He is not a boatman. But then Guha explained that I am a simple boatman who takes from one shore to another some passengers. But what to speak about the holy name of Lord Ramchandra and Lord Ramchandra himself, those who surrender unto his lotus feet. He also is the boatman. His holy name is the boatman, which ferries the souls from birth and death, from the shore of birth and death to deathlessness. So he is also doing the same job of ferrying souls from this material world to the spiritual world. And I am also ferrying people from one shore to another. So we both are in the same business. So how can I take money? So when Lord Ramchandra heard this, he gave a very tight embrace to Guha. And in fact, this is the summum bonum of understanding that the lotus feet is the boat which will carry us from the ocean of birth and death. In fact, there is a very beautiful shloka in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which says that the lotus feet is like an umbrella for the surrendered souls. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 5th chapter, 39th shloka, it says, Namamata deva padara vindam prapannato papa ma atapatram. Atapatram means umbrella. Yan mulaketa yatyojayo saru samsara dukkham bahirukshitpanti. It's a very beautiful small translation. The demigod said, O Lord, your lotus feet are like an umbrella for the surrendered souls. What a beautiful comparison. First, it's compared as a boat, and then it's also compared as an umbrella. So where is the umbrella? Why is he compared as an umbrella? Because there is a lot of rain of distress which falls upon the surrendered soul, protecting them from all miseries of material existence. So it's a rain of distress. Birth, death, old age, disease, ill fortune, not having wealth, lot of diseases, all these kind of miseries are thrown in front of the soul, and it comes down as a rain. But then the lotus feet of the Lord is like an umbrella. All the sages under that shelter throw off all material miseries. We therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet. So the lotus feet is compared as a very beautiful umbrella. It is also compared as the boat. So it's an umbrella for the surrendered souls. But if we go back to that purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions one beautiful mention that this whole, similarly, Caitanya Mahaprabhu stated, in fact, he's saying that this whole thing is for Caitanya Mahaprabhu. He's saying that, if you look at this is the verse which is coming after the Krishna Varnam Tushar Krishnam. And the next verse are now presented to glorify the Lord's appearance in Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Prabhupada is directly mentioning that this verse is for glorification of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So in Chaitanya Bhagavat, we are saying, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, please worship the lotus feet. And here, Srila Prabhupada is very clearly mentioning, it is a direct glorification for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the members of the ISKCON movement are so much absorbed in Krishna Varnam or chanting the holy names of Krishna that sometimes ordinary persons refer to them as the Krishnas. Thus, whoever comes into contact with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement immediately begins to worship Krishna by chanting his holy name. Srila Prabhupada is carrying the same mood as what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is writing in those purport. He is mentioning that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is inaugurating the movement to Keshav Kashmiri. He is giving the movement to Keshav Kashmiri, and we have to follow in the same footsteps. In fact, Srila Prabhupada even writes that people living in South America, they sometimes cannot come to India and take this beautiful land of India, and they cannot receive the mercy. Please read this. For all those who couldn't travel to Vrindavan during Kartik, who couldn't travel to India, this verse is a savior. In this word, the word Tirthaspadam means that the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are the shelter of all holy places. As the Krishna conscious movement spreads all over the world, we often find, especially in poor third world countries, it is very difficult for people to travel to India, to visit the most exalted holy places such as Vrindavan and Mayapur. Especially in South America, it is very difficult for a large number of devotees to visit such places in India and purify themselves. So what is Srila Prabhupada mentioning? But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so merciful that simply by worshipping him, Vaishnavas throughout the world receive the benefit of having visited the supreme holy place, namely the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Thus, there is no loss for the followers of the Krishna consciousness movement, despite their external situation. So if anybody is feeling left out of not visiting holy places in this Kartik, this verse should give them a lot of balm to the heart. That by sitting at home, worshipping the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Nityananda Prabhu, we are visiting all the pilgrimages in this whole cosmic manifestation. By taking the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, because it is the place of all pilgrimages, we are visiting all the pilgrimage places. So this is what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very clearly mentioning. And this is what he would like to tell us again and again in his verses, by his instruction, that know without doubt that the goal of knowledge is to fix one's mind on Krishna's lotus feet. And this Krishna's lotus feet is being spoken by the gopis. And the gopis also speak this very wonderfully. They mention Pranata Dehina Papakarshanam Trinacharanugam Sriniketanam Fanifanarpitam Te Padambujam Trunakuche Shunaha Krinti Hrichayam. So they say very nice, your lotus feet destroys the past sins of all embodied souls who surrender unto them. Those feet, you know what those feet does? They follow the cows, because the cows follow the green grass. And when they follow the green grass, they go, you also follow. And those feet are massaged by whom? Mother Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. But you are so merciful. You are the purest of the pure, but you still kept your feet on whom? Fani fanarpitam te padambujam. Fani fanarpitam, on the serpents or Kaliya, you have kept your lotus feet. This is very wonderful. So the gopis are also praying for the lotus feet of the Lord. So in this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is indicating to us very nicely what is to be done and what is the goal of spiritual life. We'll read the final two slokas and end for the day. Text 180. Etabali Mahaprabhu Santoshita Haya Alingana Karilena Dvijeradariya. After saying this, the Lord embraced the Brahman in satisfaction. Paya Vaikuntha Naya Kera Lingana Viprera haila sarva bandha vimochana. Being embraced by the Lord of Vaikunta, the Brahmana was freed from all material bondage. Now, this is very beautiful for us to learn also that Sriman Mahaprabhu is saying, which is the highest mercy. When you serve Krishna up till death with confidence, when you fix your goal of intelligence unto the lotus feet of the Lord, then what happens is that Krishna becomes pleased. He lifts you up and he embraces you. The embrace of the Lord is like the Lord is giving everything for the devotee. In fact, when I was in Vrindavan, there was a very good devotee who mentioned about a beautiful pastime of one of the deities of Vrindavan in Banke Bihari. We generally don't go there because it's too crowded, but while I was walking in Vrindavan, he was mentioning about it. Once there was a devotee who wanted to get a flower garland for Banke Bihari. And he went to a flower seller and he asked for a garland. And when the flower seller gave a garland to give it to Banke Bihari, at that time it said that Akbar, one of the emperors, he came and he wanted garlands to wear it for himself. So the soldier of Akbar, he came across and he asked for all the garlands from all the garland sellers, all the flower sellers, to give the garlands for Akbar or the emperor or the king who passed by. This garland seller, he said that I will give you all the garlands except the one which I have already sold to this gentleman devotee who plans to give it to Banke Bihari. So the soldier said, no, it has to go to Akbar. I can give you whatever price you want. I will give you 1 gold coin for that garland. Please give it to me. The garland seller was tempted. 1 gold coin for a garland, that's pretty steep a price. But he's getting that. So he requested the devotee to give the garland to him. The devotee said, no, I will give you 2 gold coins. Now he was tempted. Now he said, he's giving me 2 gold coins. Then the soldier said, I'll give you a pot of gold. Give me the garland. At that point of time, the soldier thought that now he might not resist because he cannot give, obviously, for 1 garland of flowers, he cannot give more than a pot of gold. But that devotee said, I give everything. I give my house. I surrender my wife. I surrender myself. I surrender my kids. I surrender my bullock cart. I surrender my oxen. I surrender my cows. I surrender my courtyard. I surrender my riches. I surrender my wealth. Everything for this 1 garland of flowers. And that soldier was taken aback. He couldn't put anything on the other side to trump this particular offer. And the garland seller gave the garland to this devotee. And this devotee was so happy because now he has shelter under the lotus feet. He has sold everything, all his material riches and everything for 1 garland. It is said that when he entered the altar to place the garland to Banke Bihari did not know what to give the deity. So he was bending down to accept the garland, the love of the devotee. This is what Krishna does. When the love reigns supreme, he embraces, he gives himself to the devotee. He was just bending down. He was ready to accept the garland, a simple garland. What he says in Bhagavad Gita, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati. One who gives it with devotion. And that devotion, Banke Bihari wore the garland. And this is what we learn in devotional service. When Akrura fell at the lotus feet of Balram and Krishna, his eyes were wetting their lotus feet. And he was meditating on the lotus feet. And he saw the signs of the gourd, the flag, the emblem, the fishes, everything on the lotus feet. Krishna lifted Akrura up and gave him an embrace. When Sanatana Goswami was lying down flat in front of Sriman Mahaprabhu, he picked him up and gave him an embrace. When Raghunath Das Goswami saw Srinivas, he gave him an embrace. So this embracing each other, devotees embracing each other, getting an embrace from the spiritual master, getting an embrace from the high devotees of the Lord, getting Krishna's embrace, getting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's embrace, this should not be taken very lightly. An embrace from the spiritual master, an embrace from the senior devotees of the Lord. This is highest blessings. And this should be taken in very much awe and reverence. And this is a great catalyst in our devotion service. So what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did was gave Keshav Kashmiri the real price that he came for, which is the embrace. He put a brace to his pride and gave embrace to him to give the wonderful devotion. So in this way, Sriman Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defeats the Digvijay Pandit, and Nimai Pandit or Sriman Mahaprabhu reigns supreme in his form, in his ways. So this is a very wonderful pastime which we got to learn today. The time is up. So I would like to conclude here by constantly remembering the lotus feet of the Lord, by serving, by preaching boldly, and by remembering the Lord, his lotus feet, and always preaching till the time of death. This should be our goals in spiritual life. Our goals should go beyond death, beyond this lifetime. We should have vision boards for lifetime after lifetime. Our only goal is wherever Srila Prabhupada, wherever he is preaching, our goal is to go and assist his devotees and disciples to constantly preach. Recently, in one of the lectures of His Holiness Kadam Karana Swami Maharaj, he gave in Vrindavan, he gave a very wonderful lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam. And he was mentioning about how to go back home, back to Godhead. So much so that some of the Prabhupada disciples, they came to his house and they mentioned, Maharaj, that was such a wonderful class. Just by this class, you're going back home, back to Godhead. And the answer given by His Holiness Kadam Karana Swami Maharaj was very, very enlightening. He said, I am not interested to go back home, back to Godhead. I am interested in preaching. So you'll find me somewhere here preaching again. So this is the spirit of preaching. This is the spirit of executing service. This is the spirit. Of course, Srila Prabhupada mentions that we should go back home, back to Godhead, but we see in Srila Prabhupada's examples that he came specifically to preach. So we should take that verse to heart, that till the time of death, we should serve Krishna with confidence. We should boldly preach and have faith in the holy name. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This will protect us, come what may. And the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the shelter of all pilgrimage places. So we can have Mathura Vas, we can have Vrindavan Vas, we can have Dham Vas, we can have Nameruchi, and this will give us the ticket to Vaishnav Seva. They will embrace us, they will take care of us, and this will take us home back to Godhead and engage in His service constantly. Thank you very much for your patient listening. I wish all of you that you can really serve Krishna's lotus feet. And if you have any questions or comments, of this lecture, you can please feel free to address. I'll try if I can hear and listen to you. And thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak. Yadastas kalitam kinchit vidvam satpureyantu tat, yadastas kalitam kinchit vidvam satpureyantu tat, yadastat saushtubam kinchit tad gurur eva menehi. If there are any mistakes in this rendition, please excuse me, please correct me. There are seniors and they can correct me. They can point out to the mistakes. If there is anything that is good, all glories go to our wonderful parampara of Acharyas. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai. If there are any questions, comments, clarifications, they can unmute themselves and they can ask.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. Haridas Varya Prabhuji. Jay, thank you so much for a very, very beautiful nectarian class. You explained all the verses so beautifully. Up to the time of the verse that you explained, up to the time of your death, serve Krishna with confidence. I mean, no matter what happens, still when one comes to Krishna consciousness, and till the time we leave this material body, we should fully surrender, serve Krishna, what may come. I mean, we should not be in doubts. We should always know that Krishna is there for us, no matter something good is happening, something bad is happening, or whatever may happen in our life. You give wonderful examples of Dhruv Maharaj, who was only at the age of 5, he started his devotional service. Prahlad Maharaj, who started his devotional service in the mother's womb. Amesh Maharaj, Pandavas, Bharat Maharaj. Very, very beautiful class, Prabhuji. And in the end, the beautiful realization of the devotee of Srila Prabhupada, who was told, always stay with me, and he will take those words to his deathbed. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet, whoever surrenders without any doubt, with full surrender, his sins are destroyed. Yeah, very beautiful class. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Done with my court, done with pranam to you. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Before we open the forum for questions and realizations, I request please ask only questions related to the class today, as these classes are recorded and shared in different forums. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranams, glories to Prabhupada. Thank you for such a beautiful class, Prabhu, and very, very nice realizations, the way you churned that verse. And just seek your blessings that, we may also imbibe that mood of remembering Krishna every time, till the time of our death and even after. So yes, Prabhuji, as you were asking about that different devotees at different age, they perfected their life and they followed devotional service. By any chance, do you have the verse handy with you? Because I know this, and there's an entire verse on this, and the translation is mentioned in one of the Chatushloki Bhagavatam verses, but I don't remember the verse itself. So if by any chance it's handy, if you can share.
It's not handy with me, Mataji, but I can send it on the group once I find it.
Sure. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Sure.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your association, Prabhu. Look forward for more of your sessions. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the kind words, Mataji. And I'm definitely not in a position to bless. But one of the examples that always come to my mind is His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj, who has dodged death so many times. Recently, I was hearing a very wonderful pastime by his servant, Mahavara Prabhu, where he was mentioning that whenever he was in the hospital and he went to Chennai's hospital again and again, one of the first things he used to recognize all the nurses that had attended to him, and he used to ask, how many rounds are you chanting from the last time? Now, this is somebody who is getting operated on his kidney and a liver. And at that time, he's saying, how many rounds are you chanting? How many? I can't even imagine. That is a living example of, whether death or no death, I will keep serving. So
very true.
Such are the devotees who can really bless.
Yes, Prabhu, definitely he's a Mahabhagavat.
Yes.
So, but thank you for sharing, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Dandavat Pranams.
Anybody else who have any questions or clarifications or mistakes that they can point out? Be happy if I can address them.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranams. Very, very nice class, Prabhuji. I have a few questions. I just have to confess that I've not been regularly listening, so maybe some of them are repeat, perhaps, but if you can help me, that'll be great. So I would like to know that, in the purport which we just read today, the 177, it said that, Sri Keshav Kashmiri, he actually started worshipping Radha Govinda, because of coming into the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates. But then later on, they left and formed their own sampradaya. So did they even go away from the Nimbarka? Or, I was not clear. Do you have any information on that, Prabhu?
I really do not have what was the path that they traversed. But it is very clear from the purport that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gives us an insight that they were not following the lotus feet of Sriman Mahaprabhu. However, they did carry the blessings of Sriman Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In fact, they formed their own sampradaya, is what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is mentioning. So from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's purport, we learn that the greatest fortune is to be under the shelter of Sriman Mahaprabhu's Gaudiya Sampradaya. Because in this Sampradaya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is offering the highest fruit from the tallest tree of Vedic scriptures, which is the love of Godhead. So it's very rare, and it will be very unfortunate if we miss the boat. And so from that perspective, Keshav Kashmiri and others formed a different sampradaya, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is saying they went away. They did not continue in the teachings. But if you see, he also mentions in the purport that Sri Sanatana Goswami and others, because Keshav Kashmiri was blessed by Sriman Mahaprabhu, that is eternal. You cannot take that away from Keshav Kashmiri, because he was blessed, he was embraced by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And because he's the compiler of Krama Deepika, they took some teachings from that in their Gaudiya Vaishnava Smriti. So this talks about that we do not kind of judge by the ultimate result, but we see that if Sanatana Goswami and others respected his works and took some works, that means we give utmost respect to them. But it's a fact that they formed the sampradaya. But that's between a jiva and Krishna. That's between them to understand what's their path, whether it's their service, not. We do not know much about it. At least I do not know if somebody has done a research about his life. But we do not see him in any light which is lower, because he could directly see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was a person who could get darshan of Mother Saraswati, who is to be residing on his lips. He's the one who went and won over everybody, but he got just vanquished by the Lord, by nobody else. So he's a very, very advanced devotee. So we really pay our awe, our reverence, our respect. And his name is mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavat, which itself is a great glory. So we see him in that respect. Hope that answers the question about the person, the personality, and their final destination, what happened to them. But we give them awe and respect because our acharyas gave that awe and respect and took his teachings in Krama Deepika. Does that answer the question, Mataji? I'm sorry, I went a little differently, but does that answer the question?
Sure, Prabhu. It's obvious that, we're not trying to be disrespectful. All my question was towards, in the end, the last line said he formed another sampradaya. So I was just curious if he even gave up on Nimbarka and went on another route or something. So I was just curious. Yeah, I mean, we have to be respectful of all the great acharyas of all sampradayas. That's a given. And also, I had read earlier somewhere that even the Gopal mantra is actually taken from Krama Deepika. I mean, Sanatana Goswami had taken it from there. So, yeah, due respects to all the acharyas, no doubt. Just, I was curious, why it said that. I mean, I was curious why he even gave up on Nimbarka Sampradaya. I mean, it's another thing he may not have taken to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings, but I was just curious. Yeah,
sometimes devotees do come across deities, personalities, and they do miss the importance of those personalities. For example, we see even Krishna Leela, when he enters Mathura, the laundryman or somebody else does not understand Krishna, who he is, and sometimes misunderstand them. Even the Kubja, she did not initially understand, but after but she gave everything for Krishna, looking at him. But then she understood who Krishna is. And so it does happen at sometimes that even jivas, even when they meet the Lord, they do not understand the full glory of the Lord. Duryodhana did not understand, he was envious. But in this case, he came for a competition with the Lord. So in a way, we can also understand that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is one when he is having sincere devotion in the heart. When one comes in a mood of competition and others, they cannot really absorb the love of God that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving. So it's very unfortunate in that way, if they leave the shelter of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But we see so many others who have just genuine devotion. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu awards them love of God. So yes, but we do not know the final goal, what they achieved and what sampradaya they formed. I am not aware of that.
No worries, Prabhu. I was just curious. I mean, and yeah, like you rightly said, the Lord uses his devotees for different purposes. So there may be other purposes, Krishna is trying to use them for. My other question was regarding that verse which you quoted for, why the lotus feet, the worship of the lotus feet of the Lord is so important. Sorry, I missed the reference. Can you please share that reference, Prabhu? And I didn't get the gist of it, why, that is so important, because I've been looking for an answer for this for a long time. So it'll be nice if you can please reiterate.
So there are many verses, Mataji. I can give you the one which is very potent and gives 7 or 8 reasons is 11th canto, 5th chapter, 33rd verse, 11.5.33. And I will paste the verse in the chat as well. So this is the verse which it says 11.5.33. It gives us a very clear message of why we should worship the lotus feet, because it is the object of meditation. It removes the embarrassments of material life. It helps us attain pure love of Godhead. It is a shelter of all holy places. It's a shelter of all pilgrimages. Even Brahma, Shiva, and all saintly personalities, they worship the Lord. And it offers us shelter for all those who bow to the lotus feet. It removes the distresses of all the servants. And it is also a great boat to cross over the ocean of birth and death. So this is one of the slokas which mentions about the lotus feet and why the bowing down to the lotus feet is very, very instrumental. The other verses are Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, chapter number 5, verse 39, 3.5.39, where the demigods mention how the lotus feet is important. Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 28th chapter, 31st shloka, 3.28.31. This also mentions about how the Lord's glance and his smiles are important. And also 10th canto, 52nd chapter, 43rd verse of Rukmani's letter to the final verse of the letter also mentions about his lotus feet. So these are some of the references which we mentioned in the class today. Of course, there are many, many, many more. In fact, there are references of Nagapatnis to Kaliya who mention how his lotus feet is purest of the pure. But how? Why did you keep your purest of the pure lotus feet on the most impure person, which is Kaliya? And the answer is the Nagapatnis were devotees, and Krishna wanted to please his devotees. So he kept his feet on Kaliya. Gopis, we learned about Gopi Geet, where he mentions about it. So there are so many mentioned. Bali Maharaj mentions it. So there are innumerable examples, Mataji, but these are some of the references.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for the references. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Anybody else?
Which is the deity in the picture, bro, in your background?
Mataji, I think this is one of the ISKCON deities in Ljubljana, if I'm not wrong.
Thank you, Prabhu.
I will have to find out the deities. Yes.
Yes. 。  . 。  。  。 。 。 。 .
Mm. 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 。 . 。
。 . 。 . 。
Thank Once again, I would like to thank His Grace Haridas Varya Prabhuji for his wonderful association today and for a very beautiful nectarian class. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, and we are looking forward to your wonderful association in the near future. Hare Krishna. Dear devotees, if there are no more questions or realization at this time, I would like to pay my obeisances to His Grace Haridas Varya Prabhuji and all the assembled devotees. Vansha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhuyascha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavyo namo namah. Ananta Govind ki jai. Ram Thakur ji ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Bhagavat class ki jai. His Grace Haridas Varya Prabhuji ki jai. All glories to
Jai Srila
Guru.
Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Prabhuji for
Thank you,
beautiful
Prabhuji. Dandat
Thank you,
pranam.
Prabhupada.
Very
Thank you.
nectarine
Thank you.
class.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for a
Thank you,
wonderful
everyone.
class. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Hare
everyone.
Krishna.
Today's class will be tomorrow. Hari Bol closing.